Hey guys, welcome to the Get the Phone Ringing show, where small businesses come to copy success in 45 plus categories. I'm your host, Jeff Wilson. It's very nice to meet you, man. And today's show is a cool one. It's about logo design, branding design, and basically how it can make you more money. Specifically, later on in the show, Erik, our trainer, shows you how one branding design change increased his client's business by 50%. And how another one recently got mugged. We're not sure if we can tie that to Erik's branding, but you never know. And we show probably the most fun dental logo design you will ever see. So if you want to see something pretty fun and a little risque, stay tuned for that. Now, why listen to Erik Royer? Why is he an expert in branding? Well, he's designed, I think, over 200 websites and brands in the real estate industry alone, and he's worked in every other industry you can pretty much think of, in addition to working for some pretty notable clients like ExxonMobil, Taste of Colorado, Waste Management, American Cancer Society, the University of Wisconsin, and on and on. So, folks, I think you're going to enjoy this show. At first, we get into a lot of teaching on what brand is and what to think about with brands and mistakes and things of that nature. And then we get into some really fun examples, and you can see real-life examples of a change in brand and what it can do. And like I said, keep your eyes open for that dental brand. That's the best thing we're probably going to show on this show ever. So, hope you enjoy it. See you guys. Hey guys, welcome to the Get the Phone Ringing show. I'm Jeff Wilson, and with me today I have Erik Royer. Erik, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Yeah, dude, for sure. So Erik's going to tell us a little bit about branding today. Erik, can you tell us what we should expect for the training?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to review branding, and we're going to talk about branding as a whole, and then drill down into mark or logo design and kind of the common pitfalls, and ultimately how branding and good branding can ultimately make you more money.
See, yeah, I think that part right there, that's people are going to start listening now for sure. Anything where they get to make more money, they like that. So let's jump into it, man.
Yeah, great. One of the things that I think branding is one of those terms that I think a lot of times people are overwhelmed by. It's something that gets thrown around a lot, and I think a lot of people probably have misconceptions about, what is branding. And so, in starting off, I just wanted to kind of define, I guess, what branding really is. And it's more of a holistic, I guess, approach. And ultimately, your brand is the face of your company. And so kind of what you're putting out there to the world and kind of what you're telling the world about your business. It's the company name, it's your visual expression, it's also, the communication that you have internally with your organization, as well as the message that you're putting out there to, your customers and your clients. And then it's also, how your company is viewed by your outside audience, what the perception is of your company. I think branding, the term branding, initially came, way back where it was considered, a guarantee or some sort of promise. And so that still applies today where, your brand is a message and it's, a promise, so a branding promise. So fundamental principles that anybody that interacts with your company understands and expects. One
other thing along those lines, I feel like branding is this silent killer. It's like people don't realize that a brand that doesn't fit their target demographic, that doesn't communicate whatever level of professionalism or deliverable they have, that they lose business without even realizing it. I know that I've experienced that, and I think everybody should be constantly thinking about what does my branding say, because it could change, right? Every couple years you might need to update it. Your product might change, or your competitor's branding might have gotten better and better, and you might need to raise the bar a little bit. But I feel like it's this silent killer that a lot of folks just they dismiss because they can't ever say this made me this much money.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to quantify, where branding, is making or losing you money, and that's what we're going to try to define today. And I'll be able to give some specific examples. But also, I think you bring up a good point where, I think a lot of times small business owners, they've got so much on their plate, so many things that they're working on, and branding is one of those things that they kind of back into. They're willing to spend money on product development and, other aspects of marketing. But when it comes to really sitting down and getting a good understanding for, okay, what's going to be our differentiating factor? What are going to be our strengths and weaknesses? What's going to be our niche that we're playing to? And really carving out that target audience, and then saying, okay, now let's really craft our message. Let's craft our message with the name of our company. Let's craft the message with our tagline that we're using. Let's craft our message in terms of our corporate culture, and then what we're going to be focusing on, which is your mark or your logo, which a lot of times kind of sets the stage for your visual message or your visual language.
Yep.
So that kind of leads me into this next slide nicely, and it's basically just saying that what is good branding, and so how do you go about branding yourself, or just recognizing that, okay, I'm on the right path. And I think if you're doing this, I think a lot of new business owners or business owners will be ahead of the ballgame. So it starts by just having a consciousness and an image, an awareness of your business, and kind of understanding, okay, this is the message that we want to put out there. I think so many times businesses, there's a message that they're sending out that they don't even realize, kind of like what you were talking about as the silent killer.
Yep.
How do you go about having this consciousness? I mean, how do you start and how do you do that? And ultimately, what you want to do is you want to give your target audience something that they need, something that they're not getting, something that also that you're delivering on a consistent basis. So really analyzing your target audience and saying, okay, what are my differentiating factors, and really having an understanding too of the competition. And this probably goes down into marketing and understanding, just having an understanding and an awareness of your business. And then I would say, a big part is really being committed to your branding message. And so really being, what I like to call a brand ambassador, where, you eat, drink, sleep, what your branding message is, and not necessarily shaking from that. Because, one of the things that I've heard is, about the time you're sick of your logo, or about the time that you're sick of your brand, is when it's probably sinking in with the target audience.
Yeah.
Really being committed to it. And then kind of what I talked about before, just kind of knowing your strengths and weaknesses. And then, being honest with your brand. So one of the things, I guess, that I encounter as a designer is, I will have some businesses that, and it's understandable, when a new business is starting up, that they want to appear larger, they want to kind of puffer fish it, they want to expand and look like they're a little bit larger than they really are. And I think that's all right. I mean, I think that's kind of that's a white lie, I guess. But you don't want to be, disingenuous, and you don't want to be, I don't even know if it's a word, but non-authentic. I mean, you want to be authentic in your brand, because ultimately, the truth will come out. I mean, if you're doing something and you're claiming that you're something completely different, and claiming that you are doing something great when you know that that's not your strength, then ultimately that will come out, and you'll lose your target audience that way. So
I think as much as you can use pufferfish in a training, yes. I think everybody wins when you pufferfish and when you reference pufferfishes. But no, yeah. I got you for sure. So do you have some tactics here for us on some of this?
Yeah, definitely. So first, I just wanted to kind of show some examples. These are actual logos I found out there. So this is legit. And there were a couple that I wouldn't even show because they were dangerous. But ultimately, it raises the question, like, what happens if my logo or my mark is kind of sending the wrong message? And this first one with the dental, that could scare some people away. It might land you in prison. I don't know.
Wow. So, you can use that logo. I mean, they've probably reused that logo for other companies that they own. They might have originally designed it for something else, and then maybe now it's dental, and that's nice.
Yeah, dental dams, I think, was what it was for. All right, now we're just getting, yeah, we're becoming HR violations here. But yeah, I mean, so you can ultimately scare your prospects away, and anytime that you are inefficient, I guess, with business. I mean, the rule of thumb is that if you're inefficient, then you're bound to fail. If
Yep.
you are being efficient, then you're bound to succeed. And the same is true with branding and with messaging. You want to make sure that you are efficient and that you're making sure that you have a consistent message, but also that you're sending the right message to the right target audience. And so anytime you have inefficiencies, I mean, that's where you can be scaring people away, and that's where you're wasting money. I mean, you can also be, you can be confusing people, and the quote that I like to say is your customers are plenty confused on their own. They don't need your help to be confused. And then the big thing too is just appearing unprofessional. And I think your visual message is a message that people will have an impression of your business, and a lot of times that first impression is based on what they see visually. And so if they see something that looks unprofessional, then they're automatically going to assume, and the message that you're sending out there is that, yeah, we're kind of a fly-by-night, fly by the seat of our pants type of operation.
Right.
This checkpoint one, I think, is interesting because this is a software security company, and then and this is probably more realistic. I mean, the dental one is probably more humor, and then this checkpoint though is, I think, a real serious violation where you're wanting to see something secure. This is software security, and all of a sudden you have this drawing that looks very childlike, and when people think of childlike, they think whimsical and playful, and definitely not associated with the things that you want in security.
Right.
So yeah, that's the reason that I wanted to show that. So
yep.
That kind of brings me into wanting to train people on being a critique of their own brand and being able to take a look at logos out there, their own and other people's as well. I mean, it's great to be able to go out there and kind of practice, but looking at the most common mistakes that I think are made with logos and ultimately how that ends up costing you money. So the first is just looking amateurish, and I think that checkpoint one is probably a good example. And just recognizing that you're sending a message. Anytime you put anything out there, I mean, it's kind of like being a celebrity or a star. I guess I look at it in that regard, and that every movie that a celebrity does, they're putting their mark on this, and you do enough horrible movies, and pretty soon your brand is tarnished, and that's sending a message out to your audience. I mean, the same is true in a certain regard with business, and so you want to make sure to steer clear of anything that's looking amateurish, because it just says that you're amateur. And then the other big thing is something that relies on trends. I found this quote that I really like, that a brand that has no concept of its own identity is left with no alternative but to chase after the latest trends. We must replace the herd mentality with a brand philosophy. And I really like that, because I think a lot of times with logo design and with mark design, what happens is, you kind of look at what you've seen out there, and yeah, I like this, let's go with that. And this logo that's on the page right now with the swooshes, or kind of the orbits, or the rings, that was done a ton during kind of the .com boom. I mean,
okay.
Everybody Sun seemed like they had something that looked similar to that. And so, if you're wanting your brand to really differentiate you, then going along with the trends is basically like putting a sale by date stamp on your logo, because
right.
it's ultimately going to be out of favor soon.
It's like wearing leg warmers when you used to wear those.
Exactly.
You were huge into leg warmers.
Right. Still do.
See, you dated yourself. You still have that date. All right, so what do we have here? These are new versions of the Smashing.
Yeah, yeah. So these are other pitfalls. So the other pitfalls are using like a rasterized image. So you always want to use vector images. So when you have a professional that does your branding or in kind of looking at your own, you want to make sure that they're using a vector program to be able to create it. So the most common sort of the industry standard is Photoshop or Illustrator. And you can definitely see when somebody has used an image in their logo where they blow it up and all of a sudden,
Yeah,
it
right.
becomes. So the other pitfall is just steering clear of stock art, and this is again, having more of a branding philosophy versus a herd mentality. In using stock art, what you run into is you're not ultimately differentiating yourself, and you're looking like everybody else out there. But the other big thing that people probably don't realize is that you could be in violation of copyright.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
because yeah, a lot of these places where you're able to purchase stock art. I mean, you're able to purchase it, but there are limits to the licensing, and so you just want to be aware of that. And there have actually been some problems with some of these companies that do, like your logo works. There's a well-known designer out in San Diego, and his company is called Logo Motion. And ultimately, he was finding that a lot of his designs were being taken and just kind of modified very slightly. And he ended up suing them for, I think something like 15 or 20 copyright infringements,
Oh, wow.
copyright violations, just because what those companies do um, with crowdsourced design work is ultimately, they hire a bunch of small people or individuals that literally just put together whatever and throw it at you. And so who knows where they're coming up with this stuff and if it's actually, original, if it's actually unique. So that's just one of the pitfalls, I think, too, to always be aware
Okay.
of.
So we're
Another.
and as a heads up, we're at about 15-minute mark right now. So
Okay.
as we get through it,
Yeah,
because I know you
yeah.
have a lot
Well,
of good stuff to share.
yeah, I'll cruise through these last ones. I'll just make it pretty quick. But so designing for so this top one here, this one, I mean, a lot of times what you'll see is just getting into like the ego of the designer, where they're more interested in kind of making something look cool versus
Yeah.
really trying to hit the target. Something that's going to be too complex, where if you shrink it down, you want to make sure that when you blow it up, it looks good, but also when you shrink it down, you want to make sure that you don't lose it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. Yeah,
and
it's a good
then also,
example right next to it. Shrunken down, all he sees an S.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So you don't see this thumbprint. That's cool. Yeah. And then a lot of times, what I'll do is with design is I'll design in black and white first, just so that I'm not running into this pitfall here where I'm relying on color and that my
Yeah.
logo falls apart when color is taken away. Because nowadays you're going to use your logo, you're going to use your mark, on print work, on faxes, things that are going to be black and white. So you don't want it to be so dependent on color.
Eric, I've read about that before. The idea of, from a designer standpoint, of dealing with. Actually, I think it was in Built to Sell, the book Built to Sell, that
Yeah,
he was talking about taking a design firm and how they turn it into a logo shop. As just a fictional story, but um,
yeah,
they were designing in black and white so that the client wouldn't make decisions off of color.
right.
I like that
Yeah,
idea. I think that's really smart.
yeah. Well, and color is one of those things that it's easy to change. Once you have the design, you've got the composition and everything that you want. It's easy to modify, and it's also one of those things that, um, you know, very slight modifications can kind of change things drastically. So you want to make sure that it works in black and white first. And then, fonts. Font selection is a tricky thing. I mean, even as a designer, I mean, kind of the marriage between the symbol and the typeface that you use is kind of a fine balance and kind of working together. Sort of the rule of thumb when it comes to fonts is not using anything that's going to be, um, I guess, not sort of a professional font. I mean, typically you want to use something that is going to stand the test of time, and not something again that's going to be real trendy, but also something that that you want to make sure that it has a professional feel.
Like Comic
So
Sans or something.
you don't want to be using hobo font. Yeah, exactly.
Wingdings? Wingdings, use that
Wingdings,
whatever?
just yeah, exactly. Just to have the name in Wingdings and have people translate a little key next to it would be
Yeah,
nice.
that's hot.
Um, yeah. So that's those are sort of the main pitfalls that I would say. And then, you know, I wanted to show some actual examples of some clients that I had worked with that did rebranding and sort of where they were running into problems and ultimately how they ended up making more money once they did a rebranding. So this first one, this guy by the name of Marty Wolf, and his logo, if you look at it, I mean, it almost looks like something out of medieval times. I mean, I didn't know
Not
what the
not almost.
yeah.
It doesn't almost look like medieval times.
Yeah, I didn't know if he was a stagehand for Braveheart or what that was, but and even the font selections for the Posidigm process. But you know, as I talked to Marty and got to understand his business, you know, what he does is he does sales training,
Okay.
and the compass was a real big part of his business, and he talked a lot in his spiel about having direction, and so he really wanted to keep that, keep that compass, and that's actually what this thing is. It's supposed to be a compass, but you can't even read Posidigm in here, and the compass I think is lost because you don't know what it is. And so this is what we did in rebranding it. These cards really turned out nice. This is a foil stamp here with the actual compass that I think turned out really
Yeah, I like
well.
it.
And he was all about the map and direction, and so this is just an example of where I don't think he was looking as professional, and I think people were not understanding what his business was about because his visual messaging was off. And so after we did this rebranding, his business actually increased 50% because I think it was much more directed. His message was much more directed. His message was much more consistent with
Yeah.
actually what he.
Yep.
This next one, and I was just watching the news last night and saw this guy on the news, Les Harrell. He had gotten robbed, but anyway.
Oh,
Yeah. But anyway,
because of the logo? You think? Does he people thought he was just too affluent?
business just started exploding. But here was a good example of somebody who had a differentiating factor that wasn't showing it. And so Les's business it's a gold exchange, but it's different than other gold exchanges in that what he does is he has a host a party, and then I like to call it sort of a reverse Tupperware party where everybody brings in their gold, and that's common with other gold exchanges. But then what he does is he takes a percentage of the proceeds and donates it to the charity of the host choice.
Okay.
So everybody walks out of there feeling like they've donated to charity and also walking out of the party with money in their pocket. And so I thought that was a real unique differentiating factor and something that wasn't being displayed in his current logo, but his current logo really looks like a pawn shop, I thought.
Yeah.
And so, we changed it. We created the tagline, the gift of giving, created this exchange, the exchange here, obviously, that forms the heart. And obviously his business has been doing really well. Probably getting too much attention, unfortunately.
Yeah, he's getting robbed nonstop now. It's doing so well. So, that's a lesson for people, right? Like, you want a logo that helps you do better, but not too well.
Right.
Because then you become a target for violence and just
right. You don't want it to be too good.
Yeah.
This next one was another one where it's probably a good example of somebody that was using stock photography or stock art that was used, I think, by a lot of other chiropractors, so not differentiating herself either and really not showing what her specialty is. So from this logo that you'll see at the top of before, she was getting a lot of sports injury stuff, which I think probably makes sense. I mean, that kind of looks like a sports injury type of logo. Well, what she specialized in and what she really, her specialty and who she treated best were children. She was trained in this technique called Webster technique of chiropractic, which applies only to small infants and pregnant.
And uses dictionaries.
Right. Yeah, she stomps on their backs. And so we wanted to change it up so that her logo felt more childlike. I mean, felt more indicative of the clients that she serves best. And with sort of the esoteric thing or the surreptitious thing here is the fact that her last name is Orchard. So I thought having a little tree, this kind of whimsical tree
Uh-huh.
that the trunk is sort of the S curve with the spine. I thought I was really clever there.
Yeah,
I
did
thought
you
that was
when you did this one, did you slam it down on the table and say that just happened when you gave it to
exactly. I just slammed it on the table when I walked away, and I was like,
her?
I'm done. This is genius.
What more can I do?
Right. Exactly. So, um, the bottom line in these rebranding cases is that, their visual messaging needed to be in line with their business and really send the right message to the right target audience versus, sending the wrong message to the wrong target audience or even sending the right message to the wrong target audience. Either way, you've got inefficiencies, and ultimately that's what's costing you money.
Have
So,
have you drawn up a quadrant for that? The right
I have,
message to the wrong people, the wrong message to the right people, the right message to the right people, the wrong message. Maybe
yeah, but
um,
it would be a good graphic.
yeah,
I
you
can,
could write a cool graphic on it. Do you
yeah.
have any other examples?
No, that's it for examples. I figured, I mean, I've got plenty more examples, that's for sure.
No, I just wanted to
Um,
make sure. Well, so hey, dude, I appreciate this. This is it's nice to see actual examples of before and afters where you can see all of those mistakes like put um,
right.
into visual form. For folks that find that they're at this stage or they now realize that they have four of the six mistakes in one logo of their own.
Yeah.
I mean, how might they work with you to or reach out to you in terms of kind of taking a look at their branding? What should they do?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I work with clients in all different capacities. So, I would love the opportunity to work with anybody that's kind of at a point where, they feel like they are pigeonholed in a certain area and they're kind of at wit's end. And usually by the time you recognize that, yeah, I really need to rebrand, it's it's obvious and it's evident. And so the best way to get a hold of me would ultimately either go to the website or I'd be happy if people wanted to give me a call.
Okay, well, and we can put that information in the show notes below the video. That way, in
Perfect.
case this video lives on and your phone number changes for some reason, that contact information can follow the video around. So for
Yeah.
everybody who's watching this right now, crumbling your business card in your hand and kind of sobbing gently and softly so your family doesn't hear you. We appreciate you watching the show. We'll have resource information that Erik shared below as far as his website and any other contact info. And then for any of you watching this, any business owners that have gotten some value out of this, if you think there might be a few other business owners that could get value out of this, maybe spread the love a little bit and share this with a couple. And then also, if you want to get these shows sent to your inbox, then you can sign up in our box probably below this or to the right of the video, and then we will send you shows as they become live right to your inbox, and you won't have to come scour our website every day like I'm sure that you would. And anyway, Erik, thanks so much for being on the show, man. I appreciate the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You bet. And thanks, everybody, for watching. And Erik, I heard your dog barking, so I think it might need to be let in if you get a chance.
Yeah.
All right. See you, man. Take care.
My guard dog.